Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to America's Retirement Headquarters. And again, thanks for tuning into our presentation. My name is Chaz Price, and I'm a certified financial planner here at America's Retirement Headquarters. I'm going to be your host this afternoon. Thanks for being with us. We've got about 17 years of experience specializing in retirement income planning, tax planning, as well as investment management. Today, we're going to be talking about some ways that you can help that special woman in your life achieve a level of financial wellness and success that will make a lasting and positive impact on her financial future, as well as your family's financial future. And to help us accomplish that goal today, we have a guest panelist with us from Putnam Investments, Alexandra Novichik. Alexandra is a senior practice management specialist and subject matter specialist at Putnam Investments. And I like working with Putnam not only because they are a world-class investment management firm, but also because they share some of the same investment sensibilities that I do, such as long-term focus, disciplined buy and sell strategy, as well as tax efficiently, but also because they see the value in providing financial education. And they helped provide this presentation for us today, as well as many others that we've presented throughout the year. So I want to welcome you, Alexandra. Thanks very much. And I'm glad you're able to join us today. We have about 45 minutes scheduled for today for our time. Hopefully we have some time left over for questions and answers. But primarily there are four things that I want to try to accomplish today. And first and foremost, we're going to be discussing some statistics about the amount of wealth that women currently controlling in the United States and how that demographic is going to grow and shift for generations to come. And then we're going to talk about how do we create awareness and address some of the key concerns and considerations that women face, sometimes disproportionately to men, including the risk of rising cost of health insurance and healthcare costs, longevity, and the fact that they tend to live longer, as well as the risk of outliving financial resources. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the importance of financial literacy and continuing to invest for the future. And then we'll close with a review of some of the financial life strategies that women tend to experience and some of the actionable steps and strategies that you can take back and implement in your financial strategy today to help increase the probability of reaching your long and short-term goals. So, all right, we are going to turn it over to Alex in just a couple of minutes, Alexandra, but I do need to read this disclosure to you and let you know that this presentation is intended for informational purposes only and should not be used to make any investment decisions. Advisory services are offered through the Retirement Guys Formula, LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. And securities are offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, a member of FINRA and SIPC. And America's Retirement Headquarters and the Retirement Guys Formula are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, as well as the advisors at America's Retirement Headquarters do not provide any tax or legal advice, and you should always consult your tax and legal advisors before making any investment decisions. All right. So now that that's out of the way, we can turn it over to you, Alexandra, and interested in learning about some statistics on the surging economic power that women control in the United States.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chaz. And thank you to each and every one of you who are joining us today. It's truly one of my most favorite parts of my role at Putnam is speaking with shareholders like yourselves. And so thank you so much for carving out a few minutes of your time to spend it with us today. Now, when we talk about the surging economic power of women investors today, if today is any indication of the future that we're working towards, it's extremely bright. And on the next slide, you'll see that there's been a lot of progress that's been made in financial equality for not only everyone, but women specifically who are poised to lead in controlling assets. As it stands today, women currently control about 51% of all of the personal wealth in the United States, and that's estimated at roughly $14 trillion. It's also estimated to grow to 2/3 of the nation's wealth by 2030. Not only that, but we do see that 95% of families will have a woman as the primary financial decision maker at some point in their lives. And 1 out of every 11 women owns a business that generates in total close to $2 trillion in revenues. So with that said, there are still some challenges ahead of us. And on this slide, you can see that there are 3 key challenges that we found in our research on this topic. That's the earnings gap, the income disruption due to caregiving, and longevity. So first and foremost, with the earnings gap, President Kennedy signed equal pay into law in 1963. And while there has been a lot of progress made there, women still earn roughly 80 cents for every dollar a man earns for equal work. So what this means for you is potentially lower career earnings over time, which can lead to potentially less income in retirement to achieve all of your goals. Next is the income disruption due to caregiving. Upwards of 66% of women today are caregivers. And on average, they spend about 12 years out of the workforce as a result. And that could be caring for an elderly family member, young children, a friend. And really, while you can't quantify the love that goes into a role like that, when we look at the lost wages and Social Security benefits over that average 12 years out of the workforce, it can total more than $320,000. And then lastly is that longevity piece. The actuarial tables show that for a woman age 65 today, they can be expected to live on average to 87 years old, roughly 3 years longer than their male counterparts. For anyone joining us today that's familiar with Willard Scott, right? He was the one on the Today Show who's in charge of the Smucker's report of who is turning 100 years old. Today it's Al Roker that gives that report, and it's not 100 years old anymore, right? It's 104, 105, 106. So again, longevity is certainly something to be aware of, because we do see in our research that many women could face a 4-year window where they're solely responsible for household expenses, including their healthcare costs. And because of these added years from the actuarial tables here, also some added time in retirement. So overall, we see women are potentially earning less, working less, and living longer. So the question becomes, how do you prepare for these challenges moving forward? And that's where this next slide comes into play. It's all about really defining what your future looks like for you. What are your financial goals? And most people think of their finances in these 3 buckets per se. So maybe daily expenses, savings, retirement. But I want to ask some questions this afternoon. Have you sat down to clearly outline what the goals are for yourselves in these 3 areas? Have you put pen to paper about maybe some projected timelines or costs associated with those goals? Have you maybe brought your loved ones into the conversation and asked them what their goals are in these 3 areas? Now, if you haven't done that, you're certainly not alone. I think that sometimes when we think ahead to the future and we think about retirement, it might seem so abstract that it's really difficult to fully wrap our minds around, right? And really get specific. So I think mapping these things out on paper can really help take that abstract into a more tangible light. So to take this bucketed approach a step further, one strategy that you could consider here is before you. So maybe we take the buckets into different timeframes: short-term income, mid-term income, long-term income. And certainly talking with Chaz and his team can help you with this, because you could walk through a full financial checkup and see what you have at your disposal here and how you may want to organize this. But generally speaking, this is a great way to approach it, because it helps you align then your target goals and your timelines to maybe the vehicles and the tools and the resources that could get you to the achievement of those items. So let's take short-term income for an example. This could be what many people refer to as maybe a rainy day fund or an emergency fund. It's those assets that you want to have on hand for immediate needs, maybe 0 to 2 years. So you want to make sure you're investing in items that will allow you to have that cash on hand when you need it. So things like cash, CDs, money markets, maybe short-term investments are all great things to pair with a bucket like that. And I think, candidly speaking, if it were that easy, that easy as mapping out your goals and putting pen to paper, we wouldn't be here today discussing this, right? It's, I think, really setting your goals and having these discussions around women and investing that can help us along the way, but it doesn't account for everything. I think one of the most important things that we can do when we are preparing for our financial futures, besides just mapping out the goals, is selecting a mentor that can help along the way. Someone that you can learn from, someone that really understands what's important to you and the goals that you have. And it's also someone that can help you as challenges arise, and help you stay the course. Also someone that you can learn from their experiences as well to help improve your path along your financial guidebook. So certainly some great examples are friends, family members, but certainly financial advisors like Chaz, who's brought us all together today. So with that, Chaz, I'll turn it back to you to dive a little bit deeper into this bucketed approach.
Thank you, Alex. And that was one of the things I shared earlier, that the sensibilities with Putnam and myself align. And that as I was preparing for this presentation, I loved seeing the slide in here about the bucket approach, because it's not often discussed. Honestly, it's probably overlooked for a lot of financial advisors who usually lean more towards the simpler approach, which we would say more common, more traditional, which is the 4% method to asset allocation, which just simply says, we have an asset allocation that's the same on all of our investment accounts. And we typically, set a withdrawal rate of around 4% per year. And we kind of hope for the best. And while in many cases that's technically and traditionally maybe a more opportunistic approach, and that more money is sometimes dedicated towards equities and more aggressive sort of allocations, it certainly doesn't help the investor from a logical perspective, which I think the bucket approach really does. And that's really why we use the bucket approach at America's Retirement Headquarters to set our retirement income asset allocation, because again, it provides clients the comfort of knowing that at least in the short term, for the next 1 to 5 years, we have income guaranteed in a safe, sort of strategy and bucket like what we have in CDs and savings. And then we move on to more aggressive allocations in the medium and long-term goals. One of the disadvantages of using this sort of strategy that I've heard in financial advisor circles is that it's difficult to manage and it's difficult to implement. So at this point, I want to take a second and just kind of share one other tool that's unique to working with the advisors at America's Retirement Headquarters, because we do employ this bucket approach quite often. This is an example of a lifetime savings calculator that we've developed internally here at the office. And what it does is it allows us to help make some of those investment decisions using the bucket approach, but it's a quick method that we can use to kind of look at a couple different scenarios that maybe the client wants to walk through. So in this example, this was an example of a 51-year-old client who was planning on retiring at age 62, life expectancy of 90, expecting to draw Social Security at her full retirement age of 67. She was making about $100,000. And then what we try to determine is how much is the client actually spending. It kind of really comes down to what you were saying, Alexandra, about those expenses and actually knowing what you are living on. Because, first and foremost, taxes. Your FICA taxes come out of your payroll before you get $1. And that's about 7.65%. So we put in a figure of $7,650 here. Then you also have your retirement savings. And this particular individual was maxing out her 401k contributions each year. Didn't really have any other taxable savings or a mortgage at this point. And then her estimated Social Security benefit goes in there. And we can notice that out of that $100,000, she's really living on about $65,000 after all of the other savings and taxes come out. By the time she retires, that $65,000 a year income grows to about $81,000 through inflation. And then by the time her plan expires, she's going to be needing to have $102,000 coming in the door. So what this analysis does is it assumes a rate of return on those different buckets. Maybe in the conservative bucket, we're estimating 2, and we can change these to really anything that we want, depending on what the scenario is, if the client wants what's available at the time. But we estimate a rate of return, and the computer in the calculation tells us what our allocation should be in buckets. And each one of these buckets, and you can see here, this particular individual really didn't need a whole lot in that first year, 1 to 5 year bucket, because she wasn't retiring for several years. But you could see, how the other assets line up in her allocation. And simply, we have the detail of the cash flows down here, showing no Social Security until 67. And that difference there is the retirement income gap that we're trying to solve for with each one of these buckets. And so it's a very useful tool that we use almost in every allocation and every conversation that we have with potential retirees. But the other reason why I like using this bucket approach in this calculator, because it gives us exactly what the client's asset allocation should be. It's specific to their needs and their actual information. And it's not a cookie cutter model sort of approach where you ask somebody what their risk tolerance is, and they say, I'm moderate or I'm balanced. And the advisor says, okay, that's traditionally 60-40 or 50-50. They plug you into a 50-50 model, but there's really no reasoning behind how you got there. And by going through this allocation calculator, we find that clients understand why they're allocated the way they are. And ultimately, from a psychological perspective, that helps them stay invested longer and more comfortably when the markets are choppy. So thanks for the segue. I just wanted to share that as a tool. Let me get back into our PowerPoint. Alrighty. All right, so Social Security. So as Alexandra was saying, equal pay has been the law since 1963, but it's still a known fact that women are paid less than men, even with the same skills, education, experience. It doesn't matter. In 2017, according to the Census Bureau, working women aged 55 to 64 were paid only 80 cents for every dollar that a man was paid. And over time, year after year, that earnings gap will have a significant impact, not only on a woman's ability to save, but also on her Social Security benefit, which is based on your work history. And the Census Bureau also estimated that that earnings gap added up over all those working years is estimated to total about $1,055,000, which would cost a woman approximately 10 more extra working years just to make up for that gap. So while Social Security is one major source of income, it's important to understand that it will only provide a fraction of the income that you're going to need in order to retire comfortably. And many people overestimate this fact, and they overestimate the amount that Social Security is going to provide them. And as a result, they ultimately rely more heavily on Social Security to pay the bills than they really should. So to maintain your standard of living in retirement, you're going to have to make up the difference through your own savings and investments. Now, the maximum Social Security benefit in 2020 for an individual at full retirement age, which is 66 to 67, depending on when you were born, is approximately $36,132. And if you're married, it's also important to note that the age at which you start collecting Social Security benefits can drastically affect the long-term benefits of your spouse. Most men start collecting Social Security benefits at age 62 or 63, which is far earlier than their full retirement age. And what happens is by collecting early, they're not maximizing that benefit, which results in a lower long-term survivor benefit for the spouse if your husband was to pass away. However, if your husband postpones claiming Social Security, it could significantly increase your long-term benefit. All right, so next slide here. Now let's take a look at another consideration that women have, which is longevity. And on average, women are expected to live longer in retirement by about 3 to 4 years. And because of that longevity, women are in a unique position when it comes to saving for retirement. In fact, the majority of people right now who are age 85 and older are women. So a consequence of longevity is that statistically, people pay an increasing amount more of healthcare and related expenses as they age. And healthcare spending is projected to increase about 6% annually, whereas inflation right now, it's hard to estimate, but it's anywhere from 2 to 3. So healthcare costs are about double what the normal cost of goods and services are in the United States. So you really need to make sure that retirement planning is taking into consideration a long-term lifespan and one that is taking into consideration rising costs of healthcare. So we'll move on to the third consideration here, which is staying invested and putting time on your side. So let's look at the benefit of staying invested. So over 70 years, there have been about 13 bear markets lasting an average about 13 months and declining a total of 25.8%. I recently read a book, Tony Robbins, it's called Unshakable, and he says that, financial downturns are about as common as winter, literally. He said almost every single year since 1920, there's been a 10% correction in the market. It's going to happen regardless, just like winter. Some are worse than others. And I think this slide really drives that point home in that, again, 13 bear markets in the last 17 years. We've experienced 3 in the last 20. We had the Great Recession, the tech wreck in 2001 and 2, the Great Recession in 08 and 09, and then COVID in just the last couple of years. So, but by contrast, there have been 14 bull markets since 1949 that have lasted roughly 47 months. And each time, each bull market, the average growth rate is about 124%. And this last bull market is actually the longest, one of the longest in history. And I think the market's been up 11 years in a row. So this is important to stay invested in, again, why the bucket approach and being having a good mentor and having someone walk you through some of the difficult times is important, because while it may seem like the right thing to do when markets are turbulent, may seem like the right thing to do is to sell, the fact is that by wading through some of those downturns, the fact is that the market's gains have more than made up for the losses for those investors who stayed diligent, who stayed invested, and stayed disciplined. And that's really what we can do for you as a financial advisor, and providing you some of that assistance and psychological coaching through some of these difficult times. All right, so, and then financial planning. So again, 41% of women say that their biggest financial regret is not investing more, while about 68% of men say that they are confident with investing. So strong financial planning and educational support like we're providing today and advice is can really significantly help close that confidence gap. And because it can help us navigate the things that can take money out of your pocket at the end of the day. So we want to learn about some of these things like taxes, the likelihood that tax rates are going to be higher in the future. I think we all recognize that fact that taxes just have to go up. In fact, there's already been some talk about doubling the capital gains tax on certain certain wage earners. So, taxes, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires in 2025. There's a lot on the table with taxes. Also, current federal income taxes right now, $1 inside a traditional retirement plan or an IRA or 401k would provide you about 60 cents of income. And again, that's based on the highest tax bracket that we have, which is 37, which may or may not be your personal situation. You may not be in the highest tax bracket, but what I think the point is that taxes are going to be higher. So more likely than not, that 22% bracket that you're in now is likely going to be the 25% bracket in the future. And, the 32% bracket may be the 35, and so on and so forth. So since many retirees hold most of their, not even retirees, but most people have most of their wealth tied up in 401ks and tax deferred investments like IRAs, taxes can really be a major component, really a big impact on your ability to generate income in the future. Also, we look at inflation. Inflation today, $1 today will be worth less than $1 at retirement because of inflation. We call that the office here the silent assassin. It's that slow drip on the faucet that you know is there. It just keeps you up at night. You know it's happening. The average cost of a new home in 1991, to illustrate, was $143,000. But by 2016, the average cost of a house was over $384,000. And it's expected to go to over $843,000. I mean, a gallon of milk in 1994 was $1.19. Today, it's over $3.25. Expected to be almost $6 in 2044. And then a gallon of gas. We've seen how inflation sets in or can set in at the pump. Gas is almost back over $3 right now. By the time 2044 rolls around, $8 per gallon. So inflation is real. Your counterparts who retired 10, 20, 30 years ago experienced it. You have to expect that you're going to experience some significant inflation as well. Also, we touch on low interest rates. So between 1994 to 1995, 10-year treasury bond yield was around 8%. Today, that yield is, hovers around 1 to 3%. This means that you're earning less on your fixed income investments like bonds, and particularly your liquid savings accounts like CDs and savings. In fact, in some countries, it's a negative interest rate, meaning you have to pay them to allow them to have your money in the bank. Lastly, I want to talk about healthcare costs. We talked about they're inflating quicker than other items in the United States, and it's clear that healthcare costs are rising, which is a significant challenge to retirees. But how do healthcare costs compare with overall inflation and wages? It's pretty striking. So over the past decade, healthcare costs have risen by more than 200%. So in the last 10 years, they've risen by more than 200%. While inflation, measured by CPI, Consumer Price Index, has risen only about 47%. Wages have risen only about 64%. So costs are expected to grow significantly in the future. Healthcare spending increases, are expected to increase with age. And then lastly, procrastination. The biggest challenge is the fear of getting started, which is exactly why it's important to have conversations and tune into events like this so that we can work with you and find out why it's important to work with a financial advisor to craft a plan that's going to meet your financial needs. So that, I'm going to turn it back over to Alexandra for some financial life stages discussion.
Great, thank you. And so, we've gone through a lot so far in our time together today. We've walked through the surging economic power of women investors. We walked through some things to think about in preparing for your financial future. And now we want to zoom into some financial life stages. And on the next slide, you'll see what we did is we put together some broad groups that we felt really encompasses different stages that everyone will go through in their own financial guidebook or financial path to their goals. And so we have growing literacy, accumulating wealth, and distributing wealth. And so we put a couple examples of who may be in each of these life stages below. And what I would say to everyone joining is, no matter what life stage you find yourself in today, think through as we're walking through different ideas, maybe there is someone in your life, a family member, a friend, a colleague, that you want to take an idea back to and spur on this conversation after our time together today. So, feel free to jot down a couple ideas if they stand out and they're things that you either want to share or chat with Chaz about after our time together. So in the subsequent slides, what we have done is we've laid out the issues and concerns for each life stage, as well as some potential solutions to each one of those concerns. And we also recognize that nothing's linear. So we've laid out some additional things to think about when it comes to unexpected life events and things like divorce. So what I would say is we won't talk about everything on these slides. We're really just going to scratch the surface, really just to start this conversation. And we're going to start with what you see before you, which is accumulating wealth. Actually, if you could go back one, we'll start with growing literacy. So this could be, for example, maybe somebody in the millennial generation. That is the generation born between 1980 and 2000. They just recently edged out baby boomers as the largest generation in American history at 75.1 million millennials. Now, one thing that we've seen is, of course, many from this generation may have just graduated college. So one concern that we often hear from those in this life stage is perhaps the need to pay back their student debt while also saving for their own retirement. One great idea is to take advantage of systematic investments into a 401k or an IRA or another retirement account that can really help you set this goal and really have that automated for you over time. Another great thing that we see individuals do who are growing their literacy is take advantage of free financial tools that can help them get a sense for what a financial plan looks like and where they can start to learn, see what they have as part of their finances and set up things like budgets and future goals. So a great tool that I would offer to everyone is mint.com. It's spelled MINT. And it is a free tool that does just that. So I'm moving ahead to accumulating wealth. This stage incorporates anyone who perhaps is career focused, somebody who is really in their working years of accumulating wealth, just like the title says. And so this could be someone who is a little bit younger, again, could be somebody in the millennial generation. It could also be somebody who's a little bit older. We talked about how 1 out of every 11 women owns a business. It could certainly be a business owner. And it also could be perhaps someone who's working while also taking care of children. So really, there's a lot of different examples of individuals who could fall into this category. So again, with that career-focused piece, sometimes what we hear as a concern is that for those that have been working for a while and may have held different roles at different companies, they may be concerned about keeping track of their multiple retirement accounts in those different locations. So that's a great example of one way that Chaz and his team can help to really consolidate all of those assets into one place to really simplify that. But another thing that we've already talked quite a lot about so far today is Social Security. We definitely hear many concerns and questions around this topic, as it can be nuanced in the way that you navigate your own personal benefits. And so if you resonate with this concern, it's especially beneficial to work with an advisor who has helped countless people to navigate this and can really help make sure you avoid any pitfalls. But one tool that I wanted to share today for everyone is also ssa.gov/myaccount. And that's a portal where you can create a login and you can see what your future benefits may look like. And you can start to really wrap your arms around when the right time is for you to take those benefits and maybe some potential benefits of waiting a little bit longer, and all of those great items. So I would direct everyone to that website as a great starting point if you resonate with this concern.
Yeah, it's very user-friendly as well. It's pretty simple to get a printout of your statements.
Awesome. So moving ahead, distributing wealth is our third life stage. This is somebody who is currently in retirement. So for the first time, this group is no longer receiving a paycheck and they're no longer accumulating wealth. They're now needing to draw down on their savings and their investments that are in place to replace the income that they were earning. So naturally, the biggest concern that we hear is, can they live comfortably in the distribution phase of their retirement? Can they pass on wealth to their family members? Can they give to the causes that they care about? And so there's a couple different ideas that I wanted to share today. One in particular is around this whole notion of healthcare costs, added longevity, certainly for women investors. And so one tool that we do see many in this life stage talking about, asking questions about, navigating is long-term care. And I think there's a lot of benefit to having more utility in your life insurance policies, looking at living care benefits. And certainly these are all things that Chaz and his team can help out with if you resonate there. Another thing that we see is those in this life stage who want to help send their kids or their grandkids through college or their educational path, whatever that looks like. There is an account called a 529 or 529 account, and it's an investment vehicle that really allows you to save on taxes when you use the funds that are in the 529 account for a child's K through 12 or college education expenses. So it's a great way for you to open up early for your grandchild, contribute to it often. It's a great way to contribute to their educational experience if that is a goal for you. Now, moving ahead, we recognize that nothing's linear. We recognize some individuals, regardless of their age, they may experience a disruptive life event or an unexpected event along their financial path. And so I think no matter what this looks like for you on an individual basis, it's important that you start planning and have a dialogue early around this topic with your mentor, with your advisor. So for today, we're just going to focus on one key issue or concern in this area, and that's beneficiary designations. Who is a beneficiary? It's someone that you list on your account so that in the event of a disruptive life event, you can ensure that they can assume responsibility and that you can pass on wealth to the ones that you care about most. So I would argue that this is really very, very important no matter what life stage you are in. But that said, if there's anything else on this slide that stands out to you, feel free to jot down a note. We also kind of put it in a checklist format. So if you want to check it off, these are great things to bring to a conversation with Chaz after our time together today.
Alexandra, I just have to ask, I see the I love you letter there.
Yes.
Is there any color on that one that you can provide? That's a cool one. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, so the I love you letter is a great way to prepare for the unexpected because it's a secure document that allows you to map out all of your important account information, passwords, and important contacts, like, for example, your financial advisor, so that in the event of an unexpected life event or an emergency, your family members have access to all of the important information that they may need. And so we name it an I love you letter because I think, aptly named, it's a great way for you to, really set up your family for hopefully the most alleviated stress that they can have in a situation like that.
Yeah, during a very stressful time. Perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so last but not least, we made its own slide for the special considerations that you may face as a widow or divorced individual. And so this falls into that bucket again of an unexpected life event. Of course, this is something that nobody plans to be in or expects to be in, but I think one of the best things that you can do if you are faced with one of these life events specifically is to start these conversations as early as possible and really get as organized as possible from the get-go. So gather all the documents that you have, map out your priorities for your children, if there's children involved, your spouse's priorities, really just get everything in line when it comes to property, finances, different assets that you may have. What I would say is when it comes to divorce specifically, 90% of divorce filings are made by women. And of course, when a divorce takes place, there can be a significant decrease in household income. And so again, increased need for for planning ahead. Another thing, Chaz, you mentioned Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That actually enacted new tax rules regarding spousal support. So, in any divorces that happened after January 1st of 2019, the individual who pays spousal support can no longer deduct that from their taxes. And the recipient as well of the spousal support payments are not able to consider that taxable income. So I think there are some additional nuances when it comes to the tax planning in this area as well. So again, as a reminder, I think the best thing that you can do is get organized. If you do find that you're in, preparing to go through this, get as organized as possible from the get-go. And certainly, if there's any questions here, we're happy to talk further offline.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Alexandra. And I just wanted to do a quick deep dive into one topic that I think is absolutely crucial for retirement planning, which is optimizing your Social Security benefits. And actually, we have several Social Security optimization specialists here on staff at America's Retirement Headquarters that do only that full time. Is they look to see, how we can not break even. A lot of the analysis that I've seen in the past that advisors use as a break even analysis to say which strategy makes the most sense. How long do I have to live to break even? We don't want you just to break even. We want to maximize your Social Security benefits. And so I wanted to take some time and just kind of do a deeper dive into that subject, because Social Security for today's retirees is probably the most important topic and a most important component of developing a retirement income strategy. The reason being is that because generally speaking, people are living longer and many don't have access, as we spoke about earlier, to the traditional pension plans and defined benefit plans that provide guaranteed lifetime income. Particularly so with the rise of the defined contribution plans, which you're most familiar with, like 401ks, 403bs, where instead of giving you a defined pension or a benefit, your employer gives you a defined match and just basically matches whatever amount of money you are willing to save for retirement up to a certain maximum. So in those cases, Social Security will be really the only source of guaranteed income for many retirees. And in fact, for about 61% of elderly beneficiaries, Social Security actually provides the majority of their cash income. So claiming Social Security is a very important decision to make, because you're claiming, when you claim your Social Security, it locks you into a lower monthly benefit if you claim it early. And for married couples without guaranteed income like pensions, they should really consider strongly their claiming strategy and how to the options available to maximize the survivor benefit, which is for whatever spouse survives the longest, especially in the cases where one spouse is the primary wage earner, or maybe another is doesn't work outside the home. So you want to take those things into consideration. And you need to really think in terms of joint life expectancy when you're claiming Social Security, not just for the highest income earning strategy for the working spouse. So by waiting to collect Social Security at your full retirement age or beyond, you are able to lock in a higher spousal benefit for the surviving spouse, which is important, so that if one of the spouses pass away, you've got that higher benefit locked in for the rest of the surviving spouse's life. And then lastly, there are special rules which apply to divorced and widowed individuals. We can talk about some of those offline, but divorced individuals may receive benefits based on the ex-spouse's earnings record. There are certain conditions that must be met. First of all, the marriage must have lasted at least 10 years or more, and the ex-spouse must be eligible for Social Security benefits. Doesn't mean that they have to have filed for benefits yet, but they just have to be eligible to receive them. And the spouse making the claim on the ex-spouse's record is the other condition is that they have to be unmarried and at age 62 or older. So unlike spouses or ex-spouses, widows may receive benefits as early as age 60. However, the benefit amount beginning benefits that early would be about 71.5% of the full benefit that you could receive based on the deceased spouse's earnings record. So there's a lot of timing there that's important. So you definitely want to talk to a professional claiming strategist. The longer the benefits are delayed, the greater the amount. However, one important caveat is that unlike retirement benefits, survivor and spousal benefits do not increase if claimed after full retirement age. And then the last point we wanted to make is that survivor benefits are lost if you remarry prior to age 60, unless that marriage ends in divorce or death. So that's a lot. Thanks, Alexandra. I know we covered a lot of information today. Hopefully it was beneficial to everybody that was able to tune in, and they learned a little bit about more how to empower yourselves and how to empower the women that are important to them in their life and help them take control of their financial future, and most importantly, how to take action. So that's the last slide that we have today formally for you is how do you take action? You know, what are some of the next steps? And I think, Alexandra, you've done a great job of talking about that in some of the earlier slides. But, you know, one of the things that you want to first do is, in my opinion, is to have a conversation, right? To have a conversation with loved ones, with your spouse, with your other family members, people that help you make financial decisions, and kind of document out expenses, document out goals, and some of your concerns as it pertains to retirement. Essentially take an inventory of your financial goals, your needs, your wants, your wishes, your assets and income, and then see what flows from that conversation. The next thing you would want to do is review those goals with a qualified financial planner or a mentor, somebody that you trust to give you unbiased advice and to help you come up with a set of observations. So that's really where we come in at the retirement headquarters is nothing is ever for sale, you know, here. It's only ever, we meet with our clients, we offer a totally free consultation just to give you some observations and to give you some recommendations on how we think we can put you into a better financial position. It's up to you whether you decide to take those recommendations or not, but we're more than happy to always have a conversation with anybody that's interested in learning a little bit more or having a second opinion on their financial situation. And then lastly, I think it's important that you share the information, what you've learned today and what you learned over the years with other women to help empower them as well, especially those younger ladies, your daughters, your granddaughters in the family that are important to you, so that they have the maximum amount of time on their side to overcome some of these financial challenges that we've talked about today. So again, thank you, Alexandra, for your time. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And we do have just a couple of minutes for questions that have been submitted into the chat. And I think, honestly, you've answered everything for the most part that was submitted today. One question was, how can I get more comfortable and knowledgeable about investing? And I think you talked about, you know, the mentor earlier in the slide and talking with a family member or somebody.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think even another great resource, if you're just starting to learn, is Investopedia. It's just a great place for definitions if you're unsure what something means. Another great free resource.
Perfect. Another question that was submitted here was, what are some of the things that you could do to protect yourself in the event that you think a divorce is coming? And you talked about, you know, getting things together. If you think that's the direction that things are headed, you know, get your plan together, your investments, and understand, right?
Yes, absolutely. And as I have a designation called Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, there are certified divorce financial analysts out there. So if you are seeking additional help in getting organized, they can help you put together what's called a financial affidavit, which helps you to really, you know, map out what are all of the things that you have together in terms of finances and assets and all that good stuff. So if you need outside counsel, there certainly is that as an option. But I think generally speaking, like you said, just start to get organized and start to gather all of those items.
Perfect. And then last question I can handle, I think, you know, with all of the different, and I know exactly where this is coming from. My son is starting college as well. So with all of the different competing demands on our finances, how do you save for education and retirement? And that's a very good question. We get that a lot. from our clients and prospective clients. And I think it always starts with planning, right? Primarily our goal as a financial planner is to take a limited number of resources and kind of direct them towards an unlimited set of goals in the most efficient way possible. One way that we accomplish that is using a tool called a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA, you may be familiar with, maybe you've heard the term. It is a saving, it's an individual retirement account. It's a savings vehicle that you can contribute. It doesn't go in tax deferred. The contributions you make are not tax deferred like traditional IRAs in your 401k, meaning that you pay tax later. The advantage of a Roth IRA is that you pay with after-tax money, but the growth in that account is tax-free. So it kind of accomplishes that goal of retirement in that you're paying tax on the seed, not the harvest, if you will. So you're keeping more of your dollars over time. All that growth and all the harvest, if you will, is tax-free. But it also has some advantages in terms of tax benefits, and also some flexibility to be able to use those funds for certain circumstances without incurring a penalty. Like any other retirement account, if you use it typically for things other than retirement, there's a 10% penalty, and that's usually at age 59 and a half. But if it's for first-time educational expenses, first-time home buyer expenses, oftentimes you have the ability to waive that 10% penalty that's associated with accessing those funds for needs other than retirement. Obviously consult your tax accountant for the details of your specific situation. So that's it for today. That concludes our presentation. Again, I want to thank Alexandra and the folks at Putnam Investments for helping us put this event on and this webinar for our clients, and look forward to having you again on another webinar.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.